We ask you to please rise for the singing of our national anthem by Department of the Air Force, 56th Force Support Squadron, Luke Air Force Base, Arizona, Honor Guard National Anthem singer, Garland Miller.
Mark time. Halt. Reason. Arm.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Arm. Hold. Hold, Karen. Hold.
Please welcome to the stage 2023 ALEC National Chairman, Florida House of Representatives, Speaker Designate Daniel A. Perez.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed yesterday's program as we get started today. I want to once again welcome everyone to the 2023 American Legislative Exchange Council States and Nation Policy Summit. I'd like to thank the 56th Force Support Squadron from Luke Air Force Base for joining us this morning. Really, a truly beautiful display of patriotism that we were all able to witness, so thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Kansas Senate President and our next ALEC National Chair, Ty Masterson, to the stage to lead us in prayer.
Good morning. If you'd pray with me. Father, thank you for each person here and for the safe travel to the event. Thank you for our wait staff and how graciously they're serving us this morning. Thank you for the speakers that you brought. I just pray you divinely inspire them, Lord, as they address us. Give us discernment and wisdom. Give us patience and brotherly love for those that we disagree with, and help us to find the solutions for each of the issues that we seek. And I just pray that you'd bless each person here. May your face shine upon them and give them peace, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Ty. This morning, we've arranged for a proper Arizona welcome. And I don't know if you've seen him roaming the room today, but as the 23rd governor of the Grand Canyon state, Doug Ducey officially and effectively put Arizona on the path towards an economic rebirth, riding an ever so slim one-seat majority to a third-place finish in the latest edition of Rich States, Poor States. Governor Ducey worked with ALEC members in the state legislature to provide the people of Arizona with smaller government, educational freedom, and one of the lowest tax burdens in the entire nation. Now, in true ALEC fashion, he has moved from the public to the private sector to lead Citizens for Free Enterprise. It's an organization focused on the promotion of free enterprise so that every American can look forward to a better tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, former Arizona governor and a friend of ALEC, Doug Ducey.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Arizona. Thank you, Daniel and Ty and Lisa. It's great to be here, and I hope you feel the same about being in our wonderful state. I want to give a special shout out. The lights are bright out there. To all our Arizona legislators who are here in attendance, please stand up so we can give you a round of applause. Well, I want to admit I don't miss being down at the Capitol every day. I do miss working with all of the legislators that are here. Keep up the fight. We need you more than ever downtown. For those visiting from elsewhere, I've lived in this beautiful state now for more than 30 years. And I can tell you from experience, you have picked the perfect time to come. In case you haven't heard, year-round temperatures vary. When people ask me about the heat, I tell them a story from Arizona's early days. There was a bishop who sent a missionary to this territory. After a few summer months, the missionary gave up, reporting back to the bishop that Arizona just wasn't a place for evangelizing. He said, "The people who live there in winter have no wish for heaven, and the people who live there in summer have no fear of hell." Regardless, our climate for freedom and opportunity and free enterprise is excellent, 365 days a year. And thanks to the policymakers in this room, we intend to keep it that way. So a group like ALEC is always welcome in Arizona. I wrapped up my tenure as governor on January 2nd of this year. After some goodbyes with my dedicated security detail, had them for a full 8 years, we hugged it out, and it was back to life as normal, quite literally. My wife, Angela, sent me off to Costco with a shopping list, and I was beginning to learn to drive again. Truth is, the past 10 months have been great, catching up with family, taking those delayed vacations, and a chance to breathe and reflect on 2 terms and all that we were able to get done in partnership with our state house and our state senate. Passage of the American Civics Act so that no kid graduates high school without knowing at least as much about our history and founding documents as immigrants who become new citizens. That was our first law, and we were the first state in the country. Balancing a $1 billion deficit with real reductions to spending, the nation's first universal recognition of occupational licensing bill. Today, Arizona has the lowest flat tax in the nation, and we have 100% universal school choice ESAs. We were the first in the nation. Today, 9 other states have passed ESAs, and Tennessee and Texas are on the 1-yard line. This can reform K-12 education across our nation and renew America as it brings communities together. Now, I'm told that we have folks from all over the country today, and some of you may have been recently elected. I say congratulations. Others, I suspect, are veteran lawmakers. Maybe your state has term limits, or maybe term limits just come in the form of the next election. Whatever the case may be, please think about your time as public servants as precious and ultimately temporary. Wake up thinking, what can I get done today to expand freedom and opportunity for all? That's the approach we took together with our legislative leaders here, and the results speak for themselves. Those of us in public service should always remind ourselves the point of winning elections isn't just to win the election, it's to govern with freedom-based ideals that preserve the American dream and improve the lives of regular Americans. Never forget the important role you play as a legislator getting good policy done. And yes, when necessary, stopping bad policy dead in its tracks is just as important. You won't hear many governors say this, but I believe the separation of powers is a beautiful thing. Advice and consent, oversight, accountability. These are important constitutional roles you play that make governors and executives better at their jobs, whether they will admit it or not. The founders knew what they were doing, and this element of our Constitution was important enough for George Washington to call out in his farewell address before retiring to Mount Vernon. Washington knew that the erosion of the separation of powers would ultimately lead to despotism. There isn't one thing that I was able to get done as governor that I could have accomplished without good, thoughtful, conservative legislators doing the heavy lifting, refining the policy, poring over the details, whipping the votes, and ultimately voting yes. We never breathed a sigh of release or celebrated a victory until we heard those magic words from the Speaker of the House or the Senate President. The board is now closed. As for me, it's been a few more trips to Costco and some fun family vacations. My mom was pleased when I found a new job, and that's CEO of this national startup, Citizens for Free Enterprise. At Citizens for Free Enterprise, we believe that the ideas of freedom, initiative, taking risks, and deferring rewards, setting your own course in life and aiming high, run deep in the American character. This country would look a lot different without those ideals and qualities. We might be able to afford many things in this country, but we can never afford to take free enterprise for granted. I started my career in business. Cold Stone Creamery was my company. My friends and I had this novel idea that we could sell ice cream in the desert. It turned out we could sell it elsewhere as well. We eventually expanded to 1,440 Cold Stone Creameries across all 50 states. Yes, even in Alaska. And running business, any business, you quickly realize that government has plenty of ideas about how you should do things. Dealing with all the health inspectors and regulators who kept appearing, I developed Henry Kissinger-like diplomatic skills. Government rules and policies can make or break a small business, which is why we need common sense legislators like the people in this room to keep policies on the side of free enterprise. We're talking about principles here that were essential to our founding, that are every bit as essential to our future, to kids, to families, and to companies. Yet there are many young people today who think of free enterprise as something to be protested, if not despised. We know from a Gallup poll that about half of young adults have a positive view of socialism. 7 of 10 millennials say they'd like to vote for a socialist. And even granting that socialist ideas tend to thrive at elite universities funded by capitalists, 7 out of 10 is a lot. How could so many American students be enthralled with a system that young people elsewhere dream of escaping? Whatever those students are hearing about free enterprise, they're not getting the full story. By the way, 6% of those millennials in the survey thought the term socialism actually meant having good social skills and pleasant manners. They're in for a real surprise if they ever go to a socialist rally. The founders of this country had the profound but uncomplicated vision that you and I have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In our system, the people are sovereign and the government is the servant. With socialism, that relationship is reversed. The citizen gives up freedom in exchange for all the promises made by politicians, bureaucrats, and central planners. It's the vision of an all-caring state. Happiness will be delivered to your door and deducted from your paycheck. Government creates rights and privileges, selects who deserves them, and divvies up the wealth accordingly. It's a perfect system, I guess, if you don't mind other people running your life and your business. Too often, Americans who keep this economy going are lectured instead of listened to. Too often, the field is left open only to those who want to disparage our system and tear it down. Outcomes are rarely ever final in the contest of ideas. We have to keep defending the values of freedom in a free society, even when they are self-evident and fundamental. This is going to be our daily mission and total focus. We'll organize and inform and advocate relentlessly. We'll be on watch for harmful policies and champion the ones that help. We'll answer attacks on the American system and give everyday Americans in your state and others a voice to match their incredible influence for good. The effort is worth everything we can put into it, because in the end, it's about a lot more than economics, and the stakes go far beyond the interest of one group or another. The aim is a thriving economy, but more than that, a thriving, prosperous, and peaceful nation. And if we get this right, if we let free enterprise do what only it can do, then a lot of other things are going to go our way in this country. And once again, we can meet our challenges from a position of strength. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your service to your state and this country. I want you to have a great conference, and even more so, I want you to have a great legislative session. Enjoy your time, and God bless.
Please welcome to the stage ALEC CEO Lisa B. Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Ducey. We always love coming to Arizona, especially in November. I will say that we were talking earlier at the breakfast table that his new organization and ALEC will absolutely be partnering, because ALEC feels and knows that we are that partnership between business and the legislative body. So to make sure we get those policy solutions done. We've experienced a great deal in 2023. We held our annual meeting in Orlando with record number of attendees. We had our 50th anniversary gala in DC with a whole host of people, including Hugh Hewitt and Winsome Sears. We had 15 academies across the country, saw universal education freedom and parental control arise in 8 additional states following Arizona and West Virginia, income tax cuts in 10, legislation that keeps politics out of pensions, as we heard last night, in yet another 10 states, all based on ALEC model policy and our discussions here at these meetings. We also experienced a shift of leadership in Washington, D.C. With the search for a new speaker, it took a few weeks, a few dozen ballots, until Mike Johnson arose from the parish of Bossier to take the gavel. As an ALEC alumni, he understands the importance of federalism, the true role of government, and the need for a balanced budget. This morning, he joins us via video. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to give you Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Greetings. It's great to have the opportunity to address all of you at the 2023 States and Nation Policy Summit. Happy 50th anniversary. I wish I could be there in Scottsdale with you to celebrate today. Last week marked 1 month since my colleagues unanimously elected me to serve as the 56th Speaker of the House of Representatives. It's been kind of a surreal journey over the last month or so. In that period, the House has passed critical aid to Israel that is fully paid for, 3 more individual appropriations bills, and a 2-step continuing resolution to keep the government open, avoid a Christmas omnibus bill, and put House Republicans in the best possible position to fight for our conservative wins on supplemental spending decisions. It's been quite a lift. But despite the headlines openly promoting the supposed divisions in our conference here, I'm proud to report that the People's House is back open for business. Before being elected to Congress in 2016, I served in the Louisiana State Legislature, and it's a responsibility that I cherish, and I credit to my foundations as a lawmaker. In that place, Democrats and Republicans in Baton Rouge rarely agreed on policy, but we did agree on the oath we took to represent the best interests of our constituents in our state. During session, we fought like cats and dogs, but we also attended meals and events together. We knew the names of one another's wives and children. It made all the difference. We shared similar policy outcomes, but differed on the path to get there. But we treated each other with civility and respect. And that's something I think that Washington has lost sight of in recent years. State legislatures are incubators for public policy and good governance. They certainly can be. They should be. The ideas that succeed in state houses across America not only benefit our constituents, but they often benefit Washington and, of course, federal lawmakers as well. The state legislature is the closest and most responsive legislative body that exists in our system, and that means being on speed dial for every police juror, every sheriff, every emergency response coordinator, and every dog catcher in your area. But it also means that legislators know intimately the problems of their constituency. And right now, we all know that the problems we face are countless. The cost of living crisis is crushing families. Prices are up across the board, and no amount of spend from the White House can explain away the economic pain that American families are feeling daily. The national debt is approaching $34 trillion, and it's the greatest present threat to our national security. Within 3 decades, interest payments alone on the national debt will be the largest federal government program. The current trajectory is not sustainable, and we all know that. We are robbing Peter to pay Paul every day and bankrupting our children's future in the process. And that's why in the days ahead, we will announce plans for a bipartisan debt commission to study and propose solutions to begin reducing our debt and putting America back on a path to fiscal responsibility, fiscal sanity. ALEC and state legislatures across the country have been leading on this front for decades. That's the model. In fact, nearly every state in the country has some form of balanced budget amendment that makes sense to the people. It's good stewardship. And that's because, like any family or business, legislatures understand that they can't spend more money than they take in. That's a seemingly novel concept in Washington, but we're trying to reintroduce it. Fiscal responsibility can and must be top of mind with every decision that we make. We have a duty to do that. It's one of the 7 core principles that I believe define not just American conservatism, but the secret of America's greatness itself. It's individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. These timeless principles have guided America since its founding, and as Speaker of the House, I intend to continue to ensure that they underscore every decision that we make. And I also encourage you to keep doing the same. I appreciate your attention today, and I want to thank once again all of you at ALEC and in state legislatures across America for leading on our principles of federalism and fiscally responsible policymaking. You are the standard bearers, and we applaud and stand by your great work. Thank you so much. Have a great conference, and God bless.
Pretty great. As Speaker Johnson said, that runaway federal government is out of control. He is not alone in this belief. In fact, President Ronald Reagan, as we've shown many times at here ALEC meetings, has said the same thing to a meeting of ALEC legislators 35 years ago. In addition to Speaker Johnson's commitment to this bipartisan bicameral commission, his chairman of the Budget Committee, Chairman Arrington, also is going to join us by video. Please watch the next video.
Greetings to my freedom-loving friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council. I wish I could be there in person with you today in Scottsdale for the States and National Policy Summit, but I appreciate the opportunity to share a few of my thoughts with you about your important mission and about the timeless principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism. that are no doubt key ingredients to America's greatness. In 1790, President James Madison said, "A public debt is a public curse." Well, today, those prescient words from the father of our Constitution could not be more relevant or more urgent, I might add. The fiscal state of the nation is bleak, and the fiscal health of our country is in rapid decline. Our deficit spending is out of control, and our national debt and the long-term unfunded liabilities of our great country are totally unsustainable. If we don't intervene soon, we will experience a sovereign debt crisis that will not only jeopardize our economy and our national security, but our way of life and America's leadership in the world. So something has to be done, and we all have to have a sense of urgency about it. One of the proposals that I know Alec is interested in is the creation of a debt commission. And there's an interest on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers of Congress to create one. Speaker Johnson understands that a fiscal commission is not a panacea to fix all of our financial problems. However, we both believe that a fiscal commission could offer a productive, depoliticized forum for educating the public and identifying consensus solutions for addressing our ballooning deficits and that long-term unfunded liability problem. He has asked the Budget Committee, which I chair, to take the lead by examining the various debt commission proposals and then developing the parameters for what would be a bipartisan, bicameral commission, not just to consider, but to pass in the 118th Congress, and I believe it will. Another idea that your organization is supporting, and something I'm very passionate about, and I know my friend Dave Walker is, who brought this to my attention, is calling for an Article 5 convention of the states. Now, Article 5 says, as you know, that such a convention must be called if 2/3 or 34 of the states pass legislation calling to propose a new constitutional amendment. Well, in 1979, Nevada became the 34th state to pass such legislation, but still, sadly and shamefully, nothing has been done since. This means that for more than 40 years, Congress failed to fulfill their duty to authorize a constitutional convention as requested by the states. So we've got to right this wrong. I've introduced legislation, HCon Resolution 24, to call an Article 5 convention of the states to propose a fiscal responsibility amendment to the United States Constitution. My bill calls for the constitutional convention that we need and we should have had to empower our state leaders to force the federal government to live within its means. Working with my friend and our fearless leader in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson, I'm going to continue to push to pass this important legislation to stave off a sovereign debt crisis, to rein in the reckless and wasteful spending in Washington, and to return power back to the sovereign states and we the people. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Thank you for your support for our common cause. And I'm especially grateful for my partner in crime on the Convention of the States and so many endeavors to get our fiscal house in order as a nation and to restore fiscal sanity here in our nation's capital before it's too late. Dave Walker, thanks for your great and faithful friendship over the years. God bless you all. God bless America.
Really great messages. And to build on the words of Speaker Johnson and Chairman Arrington, with the help of a true patriot, David Bidoff, we reached out to David Walker, who lives and breathes on the subject of the national level. The immediate former Comptroller General of the United States of America, David Walker, after a decade of ensuring fiscal managerial accountability of the federal government, David has continued his focus on restoring our national fiscal sanity. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Walker.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'd like to provide a few facts to back up what the speaker and the chairman had to say. But before I do, let me note that after me, Representative Ken Ivory from Utah will be making some remarks. Ken is a longstanding member of ALEC,
He is a longstanding supporter of federalism and fiscal responsibility, and I look forward to hearing his remarks. Let me start with a few facts. 3 very important actions took place in 1913 that had a profound effect on our country. Number 1, the adoption of the income tax and the direct election of senators by constitutional amendment. And secondly, the establishment of the Federal Reserve. These 3 actions served to fuel the growth of the federal government, undercut states' rights, and enable the federal government to manipulate interest rates and self-deal in its own debt. As a result, today, the federal government is 10 times bigger as a percentage of the economy than it was in 1912 and still growing. Congress controls less than 30% of the annual direct spending budget, down from 97% in 1912. In addition, Congress controls 0 of the $1.5 trillion in tax expenditures. And therefore, in total, when you add up both direct and indirect spending, Congress controls 10% of expenditures every year. What kind of budget is that? Congress has only passed annual appropriations bills by the beginning of the fiscal year 4 times in my lifetime. That is an F-. Federal debt to GDP has reached record levels and is still increasing. Total liabilities and unfunded promises of the federal government exceed $125 trillion, which is 5 times GDP and about $380,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States, and growing. Believe it or not, interest is our fastest growing federal expense, for which we get nothing. And in less than 10 years, the Social Security and Medicare hospital insurance funds will be exhausted. And yet the leading presidential candidates for both major parties are saying, I won't touch Social Security and Medicare. Let me be clear, this is unacceptable and an example of laggardship rather than leadership, because doing nothing on Social Security means you cut benefits across the board 20% and rising in less than 10 years. I'm assuming that nobody here believes that the federal government's in good financial condition. So it's time to recognize reality. The federal government has grown too big, promised too much, subsidized too many, lost control of the budget, and undercut states' rights under the Constitution. Clearly, we are on a fiscally irresponsible and unsustainable path. In fact, every major federal fiscal and monetary agency has said that for several years, and yet nothing has been done. Failure to act is not an option because it's a direct threat to our future economic prosperity, national security, international standing, and domestic tranquility. The bad news will flow down to states and to us, we the people, if we don't act. Unfortunately, the debt ceiling has failed to constrain the growth of government and limit mounting debt burdens. Therefore, the only answer is a constitutional amendment that can constrain both current and future Congresses. Statutory approaches won't work. As I testified before the House Budget Committee earlier this year, 3 steps are necessary to defuse our ticking federal debt bomb. First, stop the bleeding. Cut spending for fiscal 2024 from the bloated levels of 2022 and 2023. Believe it or not, federal spending was 40% higher last year than pre-COVID levels. 40% increase in 4 years. Second, stabilize the patient. Create a statutory fiscal sustainability or debt commission that will educate and engage the American people on the facts, the truth, the tough choices, solicit input, and then make a package of recommendations for an up or down vote in Congress. As we heard from the Speaker and from the Chairman, there are bipartisan bills. And in fact, as of this very moment, there's a hearing occurring before the House Budget Committee where the sponsors of these bills are testifying, and I look forward to seeing those bills move forward. Third, cure the disease. Adopt a federal fiscal sustainability constitutional amendment that would limit the growth of government and cap debt to GDP at reasonable and sustainable levels, absent extraordinary circumstances. This third point is where you come in. Shockingly, in 1979, 39 states had active applications for a convention of states to propose a fiscal responsibility amendment, and Congress did nothing. Importantly, 30 of these 39 were limited to fiscal responsibility only, thereby providing a critical safeguard against a so-called runaway convention, which is the primary objection that people raise to a convention of states. Despite this fact, Congress has failed to act, and as a result, this is both unacceptable and unconstitutional. The Federal Fiscal Sustainability Foundation, of which I'm a board member, has financed the drafting of a declaratory judgment filing by a prominent DC firm with significant Supreme Court experience. Several states are considering whether to file the case against the Congress to right this wrong. This case would have to be decided by the Supreme Court, which is conservative, and this is our best chance to right this wrong, is to get a case before the Supreme Court to force the Congress to discharge its constitutional responsibilities. We need more states to join this effort. Thank you. If you want to learn more about this effort and what you can do to protect your state's interest and to help save our future, please attend the breakout session at 9:15 at Trailblazers D and E. In closing, let me remind you two things from history. When George Washington made his farewell address, he issued 4 warnings. They were avoid excessive debt, avoid foreign wars, avoid regionalism, and avoid factionalism. How are we doing? Second, Rome arguably was the greatest superpower in history. It was a republic for about 500 years, and then it fell and became an autocracy for another 500 years. Rome fell for several reasons. They included fiscal irresponsibility, political instability, moral decline, an overextended military, and inability to control its borders. Do those sound familiar? We must learn from history and others and take the necessary steps to create a better future. We, the people, are responsible and accountable for what does or does not happen in Washington. In the final analysis, we have 3 choices: to accept the status quo, to quit, or to fight. I choose to fight, and I hope you join me. Thank you, and I hope to see you in the breakout session. Ken Ivey, Representative Kim Ivey.
All right. After that, I think there's only one question. Why are we here? Why are you here today? I know that for me, I went into the legislature because I wanted to protect my children. And after serving in the legislature for a few years and I stepped out, now I have grandchildren. I have 4 of them. And if you're like me, there's a special place in your heart that grows when you have grandchildren. And I've got to tell you, I can see in my mind's eye, I've got my little grandson that we get the little Nerf guns. We get the 25-round Nerf guns and we go play and shoot. And I can see my little grandson, Henry, looking at me one day in the future after what David talked about, what we know is coming. And I can picture him saying, "Grandpa, did you know what was coming? Did you know what was coming to my life? Did you know what the tax on my standard of living that I was going to pay for all of the government and all the life that you consumed and push that debt off to me? Did you know it was coming? And what did you do about it?" Abraham Lincoln said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we had in the ratifying conventions for our Constitution, little-known founder Tench Coxe said the sovereign power does not rest with the federal legislature. He says the supreme and sovereign power rests with state legislatures. Only the states have the power to alter the Constitution. Congress doesn't have the power. They can propose amendments, but only the states can ratify them. And even further, the states, on the application of 2/3 of the states, Congress must call a convention, and upon the ratification of 3/4 of the states, it becomes a binding
part of the Constitution without any interference from Congress. So you have the power. We have the power to completely change what's happening in our nation right now. I would suggest we have the duty to do this as well. You have on your table a letter from the state of Utah. David mentioned that in 1979, and this we just discovered recently, David and others did a review of all of the Article 5 applications that have ever been filed in our nation's history, and discovered in 1979, there were more than 34 applications combining with plenary applications for a fiscal responsibility convention of states. For us to meet, hold a committee of states like we do all the time, and decide what we do to protect our children going forward from the devastation, the bleak future, the unsustainable future that Congressman Arrington, David Walker talked about. That's completely on us. The best way to create the future, the best way to predict the future is to create it. That power is entirely within our hands. You have on your table a letter from the state of Utah that describes that Congress has ignored you. They've rendered the Constitution meaningless by ignoring the applications that states have taken the time, gone through the constitutional effort to pass the applications, send them to Congress. They're not even counting them. They're not archiving them. It's football season right now. Imagine you get the ball over the goal line. It's the fourth quarter. You get the ball over the goal line. It's there. And the referees decide we're just going to run the clock out and wait until the game's over because we want this other team to win. That ball is over the goal line. They haven't put the points on the board, and all we have to do is go to the Supreme Court, demand that the Supreme Court demand that Congress do their job, that they count the applications that we've passed and that we've filed, and that upon reaching 34 that we believe we've already reached, call the Convention of States, that we can meet and craft those constitutional measures to protect our children going forward. It was 1961 in Phoenix, Arizona, that Ronald Reagan made the statement, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected, and then hand on to them to do the same. And if we don't, we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in the United States of America when people were free. Power is in your hands. It's in our hands. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Please join us in the state of Utah as we look into the legal mechanisms that we have under the Constitution, under Article 5 of the Constitution, the applications that we've already passed, to petition the court to declare that Congress must count the applications, they must archive the applications, and if, as we believe, we've already achieved 34 applications to Congress for fiscal responsibility convention, call the convention that we can convene and hold a convention of states for the purpose of protecting our children. Patrick Henry, in his great speech, "Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death," the part that is little remembered, he said, it's natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We're apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen till the song of that siren transforms us into beasts. He says, for my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I'm willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. Dear friends, I came back into the legislature because I need your help to protect my little grandchildren. Please join us. Let's use our power. Let's use the power that we have. Join us in the state of Utah. Take this letter back home. Join us as we go to court, make Congress do its job, that we protect our children, our grandchildren going forward. Thank you. Please join us in Trailblazer B as we learn specifically. We'll talk specifically how to do this. And remember, we're here because our children, your children, grandchildren need you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was very well said. And I'd like to let the record show in Florida, we already passed a balanced budget amendment, so we're lockstep with you. If anyone's looking for details, you can see me or any of the speakers today after breakfast. But what a fantastic start to today's program. And I want to give a few announcements before we go. Please remember that the workshop started at 9:15 with the task force town hall at 10, the rural caucus meeting at 10:45, and then gathering back here for lunch at 11:50. And please make sure you're following us on Twitter, or I guess now it's, X, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that you use. We can be found at ALEC_states. And that's ALEC_states. And use the hashtags if you can. It helps us get the good word out. So if you're tweeting or posting, please add ALEC ideas or hashtag ALEC in AZ or hashtag ALEC23. Any of those will work. And with that, I ask that you check your programs, check your agendas, and we'll see you back here for lunch. Thank you.